Imagine a book so dangerous it should never have emerged from the shadows. This 1922 book isn't just any ordinary volume. It's a spiritual weapon disguised as an ethical manual, an artifact whispering secrets capable of shattering your perception of reality. It's circulated among only a select few, disciples personally chosen by its creator, masters who were sworn to absolute silence about its deepest mysteries. Why? Because what it deliberately omits, a mysterious symbol, intentionally kept off its pages, holds a power that goes far beyond healing and could plunge the world into chaos. A simple spiral stroke, preserved only in the minds of initiates, could tear apart the invisible boundaries that hold reality together. Have you ever wondered what happens when knowledge is intentionally hidden? At first glance, this manual appears harmless, filled with poems by Emperor Meiji and gentle teachings on kindness and virtue. But that's just a facade. The absence of that mysterious symbol isn't merely an oversight. It's a strategic move, intended to prevent unprepared hands from activating a hidden energetic trigger capable of collapsing subtle energy fields. While the West views this practice merely as a peaceful therapy, the truth is dramatically different. This manual is secretly a roadmap to a power few dare even mention. How could such an innocent-looking booklet become the most feared spiritual weapon in the world? This video exposes that paradox, leading you through a dark labyrinth of secrecy, cultural manipulation, and revolutionary potential. Prepare to question everything you've been told. The true danger of this manual isn't what it reveals, but precisely what it conceals, and what that concealment exposes about control over human awakening. Are you truly ready to look beyond the veil?
True power was never where you were looking for it. While entire belief systems were designed to distract the masses with empty rituals, a quantum technology for manipulating consciousness circulated discreetly among Japanese initiates, disguised as a simple healing manual. This is the story of the Usui Reiki Ryoho Hikkei, a document created in 1922 that carries between its lines not just healing instructions, but potentially the most dangerous activation trigger for human consciousness ever coded on paper. Mikao Usui, after 21 days of meditation on Mount Kurama, didn't just discover a therapeutic method, he unveiled a complete energy reprogramming system capable of transcending the physical laws we believe immutable. What makes his manual so unique is not what it reveals, but precisely what it hides. Between seemingly harmless ethical precepts and diagrams of hand positions, there exists a strategic void, the complete graphic absence of the fundamental symbol that activates the entire system. The sacred symbols of Reiki are not mere decorative drawings. They are coded sequences that, when activated by the trained consciousness, can redirect vital energy flows, alter morphogenetic fields, and potentially reprogram the matrix of consensus reality. The most powerful of these, the Choku Rei, remain transmitted only orally for decades, protected not by superstition, but by a precise logic of strategic containment. Have you ever wondered why certain spiritual tools are deliberately fragmented before reaching the general public? Or why ancient traditions insist on oaths of secrecy before revealing their central elements? Usui's manual represents the perfect duality, a healing instrument in the hands of ethical practitioners, a potential weapon of psychic disruption in misguided hands, like an energetic blueprint that, depending on the operator's intention, can restore cellular harmony or destabilize entire matrices of collective beliefs. This is the untold story of the document that should never have been read in its entirety, except by those considered spiritually ready for its true transformative potential. Rarely does an absence weigh more than a presence. In the case of the Usui Reiki Ryoho Hikkei, the strategic void in its pages represents not an oversight, but the most sophisticated form of energetic protection ever implemented in a printed document. This 1922 manual initially circulated among only 20 advanced disciples whom Mikao Usui considered spiritually prepared, a select group of guardians, not merely students. The Ghost Manual embodies an ingenious paradox. Created specifically to transmit knowledge, it was deliberately conceived incomplete. At first glance, it presents itself as a modest text, ethical precepts, poems by Emperor Meiji, and technical instructions on hand positions. However, the glaring gap, and purposely ignored by official historiography, is the complete absence of the Choku Rei, the key symbol capable of exponentially enhancing the flow of vital energy. This omission represents Usui's true strategic genius. You might question why part of a system would be transformed into text, while its most potent elements remain hidden. The answer transcends simple spiritual elitism. The absence is not an editorial flaw, it's a deliberate containment mechanism. While the official Reiki discourse propagated ideals of universal love and healing, the key symbol remained strictly in the domain of oral transmission, memorized in the twilight of dojos, recited in ritual whispers. This compartmentalization ensured that no layperson could, accidentally or maliciously, reproduce the energy trigger whose irresponsible use could potentially collapse entire fields of subtle energy. This dynamic raises the central question that permeates every system of spiritual transmission. Is it ethically justifiable to conceal transformative knowledge under the pretext of collective protection? Or does this merely represent the perpetuation of power hierarchies? Usui's manuscript thus emerges as a disturbing testimony to an uncomfortable truth. Withheld information is concentrated power. What at first glance seems like an innocuous therapeutic booklet reveals itself, under closer scrutiny, as one of the most spiritually volatile documents ever produced, not for what it explicitly shows, but precisely for what it strategically conceals. This dialectic between revelation and concealment transcends the esoteric domain, finding disturbing parallels in contemporary structures. When corporations, governments, or religious institutions selectively distribute fragments of knowledge, are they reproducing, consciously or unconsciously, the same control mechanism that transforms Usui's modest manual into possibly the most dangerous spiritual weapon in the world? Japan, 1922. A country divided between Shinto ancestry and frantic industrial modernity. The ashes of World War I still hovered over a traumatized world, while the Japanese Empire consolidated itself as an emerging power. It was in this cauldron of transformations that Mikao Usui coded his most controversial legacy. The official narrative tells that USUI, after 21 days of fasting and meditation on Mount Kurama, experienced Satori, sudden enlightenment, when a ray of light penetrated his consciousness, transmitting to him the symbols and techniques that would constitute the Reiki system. This transcendental event, far from being just a spiritual legend, coincides with a period when Japan sought to reaffirm its cultural identity while assimilating Western influences. What few historians recognize is that USUI was not alone in this quest. The mountains of Kurama had for centuries harbored initiatory schools that preserved advanced energy manipulation techniques, many derived from Taoist priests and esoteric Shingon monks. What USUI really did was synthesize and codify a system that integrated several of these technologies into a transmissible, yet strategically fragmented format. The decision to keep crucial symbols off paper was not a Japanese exclusivity. In Vedic India, more powerful mantras were transmitted exclusively through the guru-disciple lineage. In ancient Egypt, specific hieroglyphs were altered in public documents to neutralize their energetic effect. In the Jewish Kabbalistic tradition, certain combinations of Hebrew letters were considered so powerful that their complete writing was forbidden. All these cultures recognized the same principle. energetically activated symbols transcend their graphic form, becoming living portals between dimensions of consciousness. The most fascinating, however, is the historical synchronicity. Usui's system crystallized exactly when Japan was undergoing a profound identity transformation. The Great Kanto earthquake, which would devastate Tokyo just 1 year later, in 1923, seems in retrospect a portent of the need for not only physical, but spiritual reconstruction. Coincidence or deliberate design, Reiki emerged as a healing technology at the exact moment when its native country was unconsciously preparing for decades of military turbulence and eventually nuclear devastation. The fragmented transmission, part written, part oral, ensured that even with the destruction of physical documents during conflicts, the system would remain intact in the memory of the initiates. This cultural resilience strategy allowed the system to survive World War II, when Japanese spiritual practices were actively suppressed or appropriated by occupation forces. As a consequence, when Hawayo Takata finally introduced Reiki to the West in the 1970s, it had already gone through multiple layers of filters, strategic omissions, and cultural adaptations. What reached America was not Usui's complete system, but a carefully edited version, stripped of its most potent elements, yet palatable to Western sensibilities. The original design of the Chokurei, transmitted strictly via direct initiation, had already transformed into dozens of graphic variations, each representing varying degrees of dilution from the original. The revolution that changes a human being rarely begins in street protests. It usually starts silently within the mind itself. The Choku Rei symbol, drawn as a counterclockwise spiral, seems simple, but hides two different uses that only become clear when one understands the energetic vision of traditional Japan. In the West, weekend schools call it the power symbol, a button that would bring all the strength of the universe to the here and now. This reading isn't completely wrong, just superficial. When examining the original ideograms, one finds a deeper meaning: direct spirit, or consciousness without intermediaries. In other words, it's a shortcut that dispenses with ego filters and connects the person to what Carl Jung called the self, the most authentic identity that exists beyond social expectations. Jung said that symbols act as bridges between what we know and what we don't yet know we know, that is, the collective unconscious. Through this lens, the Chokurei serves not only to increase energy, but also to enhance overall well-being. It reorganizes how someone perceives reality and, by extension, how they manifest their choices. When the spiral is traced with attention and the appropriate mantra is intoned, a vortex is created that breaks the common notion of time. For a few moments, the practitioner sees the world through different eyes. Therein lies both the risk and the treasure of the method. Think about typing a password that unlocks your phone. Whoever masters this password gains access to all the device's resources. Something similar happens here. If many people knew that 3 lines and a spiral could connect the mind to its original source, entire chains of social control would lose effectiveness, from advertising campaigns to dogmas that take advantage of fear. The popularizer of Reiki in the West, Hawayo Takata, omitted this internal aspect and preferred to promote the symbol as a simple energy boost. It was a practical choice. A 2-day seminar that promises extra power sells better than a long training that messes with deep-rooted beliefs. By filtering out the most transformative part, the system became more acceptable, but also shallower. Another theory helps understand why the Chokurei disconcerts even researchers. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake suggests that everything in the universe is organized by resonance fields. Within this model, the symbol functions as an attraction point that makes energy align in seconds. This quick realignment explains sudden cures, while also alerting to its strategic use in initiatory groups. To feel it in practice, trace the spiral very slowly over your palm while taking a deep breath. Observe if there's a difference in how you perceive colors or sounds in the following minutes. When the experiment is done with respect, some people report greater mental clarity and immediate decrease in muscle tension. These are small changes, but indicate that the symbol doesn't depend only on faith. It generates observable effects in the body. Neuroscience experts add another piece to the puzzle. Studies on neuroplasticity show that focusing attention on images charged with intention accelerates the formation of new brain connections. This suggests that the Chokurei may act as a shortcut to reconfigure circuits linked to chronic pain or addictive behavior patterns. It's not about magic, but biology that reacts to correctly practiced symbols. Opening this panorama, it becomes clear why the Chokurei was treated as a spiritual elite tool. Its greatest impact isn't in increasing external energy, but in returning to the person command of their own perception. As this affects habits, beliefs, and even addictions, it becomes a powerful ally for those seeking inner autonomy. And where do you fit into this story? Start by observing something simple. The next time you feel anxiety, close your eyes, mentally trace the spiral counterclockwise, and repeat direct spirit softly or just in your mind. Note how you feel after 5 minutes. You might discover that small actions, repeated with clear intention, change how the day unfolds. This is just a first step, as we still need to explore how the spiral connects to collective thought patterns and what impact this can have on entire groups when practiced in unison. The control of spiritual information has always been more than a simple hierarchy. It functions as a filter that lets pass only what the guardian considers safe. Philosopher Michel Foucault reminded us that power and resistance are inextricably linked. In the Reiki taught by Mikao Usui, this principle appears directly. Instead of spreading the symbols to everyone, the master preferred that they be memorized by the few students he deemed ready. Thus, no fire, war, or decree could destroy the method. It lived in people's memory. The numbers clearly show this choice. Documents indicate that USUI trained about 2,000 practitioners, but only 20 became Shihan, that is, masters who could teach everything. The ratio of 1 to 100 repeats the pattern used in various esoteric schools. The logic is simple. The stronger the content, the smaller the group that can access it. To make the process even more secure, USUI prohibited notes of the symbols. The student needed to memorize or stayed out. Today, some data security specialists do something similar. They memorize important passwords to prevent someone from intercepting them. Technology changes, but the logic is the same. When knowledge stays only in the head, the risk of leakage falls, although the loss of a guardian can erase the information forever. Historian Hiroshi Doi reports that earthquakes and conflicts destroyed parts of the original Reiki lineage. Therefore, when modern researchers seek official evidence of the exact tracing of the Chokurei symbol, they find different versions or silent contradictions. What seems like a preservation failure is, in fact, an intelligent form of protection. Without a single recognized model, no group or government can easily register, regulate, or prohibit the method. Some authors call this practice biological encryption. Instead of using codes on a computer, the secret lives in the brain circuits of hand-picked initiates. Recent neuroscience studies show that memories linked to solemn oaths are fixed more strongly. Requiring a serious commitment before initiation wasn't an empty ritual, but an efficient technique to reduce leaks. The 3-level structure of Reiki also serves as a barrier. In Shoden, the student learns basic self-healing techniques. In Okuden, they expand their reach. Only in Shinpiden do they receive deeper instructions, and even then partially. Each stage offers enough to practice, but not everything to reproduce the complete system without a master's guidance. Intelligence agencies use a similar scheme. Each agent knows only what's necessary to complete their mission. Some critics note that too much secrecy can weaken content over time. Just look at the number of derived Reiki schools that promise quick results through video lessons. When many fragments spread without context, the method loses strength. Even so, 100 years later, the Chokurei still generates debates in energy therapy conferences and moves esoteric forums. Scarcity maintains interest. And where do you fit in this plot? Try choosing a symbol or phrase you consider important. For 30 days, don't write it anywhere. Repeat it mentally and associate it with a daily task, like brushing your teeth. Observe how memorization changes your relationship with the idea. When the mind realizes there's no backup copy, it treats the content more carefully. It's a simple exercise that shows Usui's logic in practice. Ancient Taoist texts remind us that the secret is never told, only indicated. Today, technology can reconstruct ancient paintings from minimal traces. This raises a question: how long would it take to decipher a symbol stored only in people's memories? Before seeking an answer, notice another curious detail. Many practitioners claim that the tracing of the Chokurei seems to change according to the energy of who uses it. If this is true, we'll understand why an official drawing will never emerge. And this is just the beginning of the next conversation, which deals with the relationship between form, intention, and consciousness. One of the most sophisticated strategies in the controlled dilution of original Reiki manifested through a historically traceable phenomenon, the deliberate Sanskritization of an essentially Japanese system. Decades after Usui's death, a polished narrative gradually emerged, academically plausible, claiming that the founder had rediscovered ancient Sanskrit symbols during his transcendental experience on Mount Kurama. This exotic narrative certainly sells books and courses, creating a mysterious connection with ancient Indian traditions. However, there exists a fundamental contradiction impossible to ignore. The very names of the symbols, Chokurei, Seiheki, Daikomyo, Honshaze Shonen, are indisputably Japanese, many with direct etymological connections to native Shintoism and Zen Buddhist practices. Why then systematically attribute Indian origin to clearly Japanese techniques? The answer transcends simple historical confusion, revealing a calculated geopolitical and commercial strategy. Displacing the origin of a spiritual technology to another continent deliberately fragments investigative lines, confuses persistent researchers, and crucially weakens any Japanese cultural claim to spiritual ownership of the system. This maneuver follows the same corporate logic of patent protection. Where no one can identify clear copyrights, commercial entities in the Western esoteric market can freely resell progressively more expensive courses without paying any tribute to the original Japanese traditions. Academic William Rand documented how Western Reiki organizations systematically resisted acknowledging specific Japanese origins, preferring vague attributions to ancient civilizations, deliberately nebulous. The cultural conspiracy hides an often ignored geopolitical dimension. In 1922, when USUI codified his system, Japan was rapidly emerging as a military and technological power on the global stage. Admitting that a nation with imperialist ambitions possessed a beyond physical energy arsenal potentially applicable to military contexts would be reason enough for international espionage or strategic sanctions. The Sanskrit origin myth, therefore, was never historically innocent. It represented a sophisticated smokescreen to keep the true cradle of the system conveniently off the Western diplomatic radar. When Reiki finally crossed Japanese borders after World War II, it already carried multiple layers of deliberate decharacterization. Synthesizing the various narratives explored so far, a consistent pattern of multi-level informational control emerges. Usui's original manuscript strategically omits the key symbol. Oral transmission is limited to a select group of initiates. The historical narrative geographically displaces the origins. The revolutionary internal aspect of the Choku Rei transmutes into an external therapeutic amplifier. And finally, Western commercialization fragments the system into progressively more expensive levels of access. This structure reveals itself remarkably similar to informational control models implemented by traditional religious institutions, pharmaceutical corporations, and government agencies. In all these contexts, potentially emancipatory knowledge is methodically fragmented, diluted, and redistributed in a way that maximizes dependence and minimizes individual autonomy. The unifying perspective that emerges from this analysis suggests that the most dangerous manual in the world represents not only a singular historical document, but also an exemplary case of how potentially revolutionary consciousness technologies are systematically neutralized through overlapping strategies of fragmentation, cultural resignification, and controlled commercialization. The various theoretical currents presented here, linguistic interpretation of the symbols, Jungian analysis of archetypes, engineering of forgetting, morphogenetic fields, and geographical displacement of origins converge toward a disturbing conclusion. The real power of the Chokurei was never in its ability to amplify physical energy or enhance bodily healing, but precisely in its potential to trigger autonomous awakening that transcends institutional dependencies. Consequently, the true spiritual weapon hidden in the 1922 manual would not simply be a specific graphic symbol, but rather the revelation that human consciousness can, through precise technologies, instantly free itself from all external mediation, whether religious, governmental, academic, or commercial. Consider the hypothetical case of a contemporary practitioner during their first exposure to the authentic Chokurei. After months of preparation, meditation, and preliminary attunements, finally comes the moment of direct oral transmission of the sacred symbol, not the diluted version found in commercial manuals, but the precise tracing preserved by traditional Japanese lineages. The environment is purposely austere, a dark room illuminated only by a single candle, subtle sandalwood incense, and absolute silence. The master slowly traces the symbol in the air, each movement precisely calibrated, energetically charged. There are no excessive verbal explanations, just instructions to observe with total presence. The disciple is guided to reproduce the precise movement, repeating it 99 times until body, mind, and energy perfectly align with the specific vibrational frequency. Subtly, something changes. Ordinary perception momentarily fragments. Where before there existed a constructed social identity, name, profession, relationships, and hierarchical position, briefly emerges a state of unmediated witness consciousness. It is precisely this perceptual leap that differentiates the authentic symbol from its commercialized versions. Contrast this transformative experience with the typical Western scenario: weekend workshop in a corporate hotel, colorful manual with various variations of the symbol printed on glossy paper, extensive explanations about how to use the symbol to manifest material prosperity. The difference isn't just in the environment, but fundamentally in the intention. The first scenario aims to provoke a rupture in the perceptive matrix. The second, to add a tool to the therapeutic repertoire without destabilizing ego structures. This duality of approaches produces radically divergent results. The practitioner, initiated through direct oral transmission, potentially experiences complete reprogramming of their relationship with subtle realities. The one who merely memorizes printed graphics may acquire incremental therapeutic skills, but rarely accesses the revolutionary potential of the original technology. The true ethical dilemma emerges: widely make available powerful consciousness tools, risking irresponsible use, or restrict access, perpetuating knowledge hierarchies. The transmission history of the Chokurei illustrates the practical consequences of both choices: strategic containment versus diluted democratization. The importance of the Chokurei is often reduced to personal problems, and that may be the biggest mistake of modern spirituality. While many people use it to relieve shoulder pain, balance a chakra, or cleanse their own home, its reach over entire groups remains poorly studied and, in various circles, even covered up. It works like this. Applied to a single point on the body, the symbol amplifies energy, seals the field, and purifies the location. Now imagine dozens of practitioners aligned, tracing the same design at the same time, and forming energy grids over street demonstrations, parliamentary assemblies, or even over the data centers that store the digital lives of billions of people. The scale changes everything. If we accept that the genuine Chokurei concentrates universal energy at a point, coordinated use could reverse harmful polarities, break artificial fields, and neutralize collective emotions fed by media campaigns. In military terms, it would be a psychic impact pulse that no radar detects, with no distance limit and almost zero cost. It's no wonder the Hikkei manual describes hand positions and breathing techniques, but omits the complete tracing of the spiral. In the hands of responsible therapists, the symbol accelerates individual healing and can harmonize groups. In less clear agendas, it becomes a pulse that deactivates, for a few moments, imposed beliefs and induced habits. This potential explains why commercial versions of Reiki appear increasingly diluted, while part of the media treats students of the original symbols as superstitious. And if full knowledge about collective applications becomes popular, we might see the rapid weakening of centralized control structures, the emergence of energetically autonomous communities, or on the contrary, the appropriation of the practice by governments seeking new forms of influence. The dilemma is simple to state and difficult to resolve. Who should have access to tools capable of reconfiguring the perception of many at the same time? The debate resembles discussions about artificial intelligence, social network algorithms, and new neurotechnologies that shape behaviors. The difference lies in the entry point. Advanced technologies require expensive laboratories. The Chokurei needs only the correct trace, the right mantra, and disciplined practice. Any well-informed person can learn. It's up to each practitioner to reflect on use and responsibility. After all, when an apparently simple gesture contains the power to affect the collective mind, the choice to apply it is no longer just personal and begins to influence everyone's future. The global wellness economy currently moves billions of dollars annually, an empire built partially on diluted fragments of ancestral energy technologies. Observe the revealing paradox. The more products labeled Reiki reach commercial shelves, the less one talks about the Chokurei in its authentic configuration. This is not an accidental phenomenon. Digital streaming platforms offer guided meditations generically inspired by Eastern practices. Publishers limit themselves to simplified diagrams without precise historical context. Search algorithms systematically direct users to superficial articles that mechanically repeat the same 3 paragraphs about the power symbol without ever touching on its more transformative applications. Perfectly orchestrated structure. This informational architecture serves a specific economic purpose. Releasing the original tracing of the Chokurei its precise mantra, and activation methodology aligned with traditional attunement would effectively bring down the paywall of formal initiation, potentially collapsing the meticulously constructed chain of progressive courses, hierarchical certifications, and royalties that feeds the global therapeutic elite, comfortably installed at the top of this commercial pyramid. In parallel, governmental institutions maintain a strategic interest in the fragmentation of this knowledge, fearing to lose the narrative monopoly over collective psychic defenses, euphemistically categorized as national energy security. Democratizing access to the original 1922 manual, complete and contextualized, would functionally equate to distributing source codes of quantum perception modification technology. Each citizen would become a potential hacker of programmed consensual reality. As long as information remains strategically riddled with calculated omissions, the market will continue profiting from energy placebos, academia will keep dismissing the system as non-verifiable pseudoscience, and the public will remain conveniently distant from their potential consciousness autonomy. Usui's manual, like every artifact of genuine power, functions precisely as a multidimensional mirror, not merely reflecting therapeutic techniques, but inexorably amplifying the fundamental intentions of whoever uses it. In the hand of the authentic healer, it catalyzes restoration. In the hand of the manipulator, it instrumentalizes control. In the hand of the sincere seeker, it dissolves perceptive veils. Faced with these revelations, we're left with an inescapable question. What reality do we choose to manifest when we finally access genuinely transformative consciousness technologies? Will we use the spiral trigger to perpetuate dependencies or to catalyze collective autonomy? The answer, like the symbol itself, remains simultaneously visible and hidden, depending exclusively on the perceptual frequency of the observer. And here we reach the crucial point that transcends mere academic speculation. Every change begins with understanding your role as a co-creator of this multi-dimensional reality. The only truly effective way to connect with that divine intelligence that permeates the Chokurei is through consistent and structured meditation. While elites hide the complete knowledge, we've developed a specific set of audio tools precisely calibrated to help you access this elevated state of consciousness, the very same that USUI achieved on Mount Kurama. To learn more and gain immediate access to these activation frequencies, click on the link available on screen or in the comments below. If this video resonated with your own intuitions about the hidden layers of reality, confirm your understanding by writing in the comments. It made sense to me.